Hey folks, welcome to The View. I am joined today by Leeds faithful on Twitter, Michael Maynard. Michael, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing all right. It's a cracking start to the weekend.
Isn't it? What a weekend. Yeah, I mean, it can make or break your weekend, and it is Leicester City 0, Leeds United 1. In what is possibly the biggest game of the season. In what was a game that I think everybody would have thought going into this game, a point would be a very good result. Anything else would be a bonus. We got the bonus. So, and a lot of things that happened in the game that are interesting in the context of what was said before the game and after the game. We'll get into all of that as well. If you are a fan of the channel, if you like what we're doing here, if you want to help the channel to grow, you can do so by liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you want to. We are 1,100-ish off of 20,000. So that would be amazing to get to at some point. Anyway, we'll crack on with this. Michael, your initial thoughts on that game, what your thoughts were going into the game, and then how you felt during and after the game.
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't really confident at all going into it, to be honest. I'll hold my hands up and say I did not expect the performance that our players ended up putting in. It seemed like one of those games where there was every potential for us to sort of go and lay an egg, right? Like the pressure on us, and I mean, I know Leicester has a lot of pressure on them, I think, to maintain a winning run, but things have just been going so well for them lately, and also they just seem to be very lucky. And we often just aren't. So I didn't have a lot of confidence going into it, but wow, like what a performance and what a result. Like it's, thank goodness for Meslier saving the extra 2 points at the end, the bonus, as you referred to it earlier. Because that was close, but we pulled it out, and that was an incredible way to start the weekend, and amazing result in what is probably the toughest fixture of the season.
Yeah, I said to my partner, myself, and Jess watched it. Jess doesn't watch an awful lot of games with me live because I tend to be very vocal and reactive to stuff that's happening, which is why I don't do watch alongs. But she kind of said towards the end of the game, like that's a huge moment. Like that save is massive, not only in the context of the amount of pressure he's been under in terms of fan opinion. It's been pretty split on him the season he had last year, rebuilding himself this year. There was a lovely moment after the game, again, she commented on it as well, where the players were celebrating in front of the Leeds fans. And I think it was Ampadu pushed Meslier forward towards the fans on his own to do the whole yay thing. And as Meslier turns around, he has this massive sigh. You can just see him go.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that's 18 months worth of damage with the fans just coming off his shoulders in one go. He had nothing to do in the game, which is a massive credit to the defense. Nothing to do.
Yeah,
but they always say, isn't it, big players show up at big moments in games, and what a hell of a moment. And there was some criticism. I saw some people criticizing Luke Ayling for that situation, but I just thought a defender running backwards versus a striker coming up over the top of them, the striker's always going to win that header. He's just out jumped. Does very well Ayling to clear the rebound. Like, he reacts really quick to that, but that's a stunning save. I mean, the ball was half over the line, half not. It was right on it. To get a hand on it falling backwards and to push it out was brilliant. So I'm delighted for him. Yeah, delighted for him. I think the social media team really enjoyed it as well by saying 95th minute, 1-0 up, first shot, Iceman steps up. And I was delighted to see that for him because he's had a tough time. He did really, really well. And then I just thought again, I don't like seeing us sitting back. I worry about us sitting back, but talk about players having their best games of the season defensively. I mean, the entire side that stepped up. There was one player, I've been getting a bit of criticism for a comment that I made before we signed him, where I said Glenn Kamara is an average midfielder. And I've explained what I meant by that, but I'll take the criticism on the fact that I've been wrong on this, I think, and I'm okay to be wrong on this. There was a little part of his game, Michael, that I thought, outside of everything else that he did, was my favourite part, and that was winning second balls. Yeah. Anytime there was a 50-50 where a ball broke, he seemed to be the player that was just nipping in, flicking it away, passing it, and diffusing the panic here. And I thought that was fantastic. It showed a level of calmness in the midfield that was going to be huge. Said before the game, I felt whoever won the midfield battle would win the game. The wingers looked like they actually ended up being what won and lost that game, but I thought the two lads in the middle of the park were brilliant to keep what had been arguably the two best standout central midfielders in the league this year in Dewsbury Hall and Harry Winks completely quiet to the point where they were absent. For the whole game. Well, I thought was excellent. A huge feather in both players' caps. What were your thoughts on the defensive display, but also the two lads in the middle of the park?
Yeah, the defensive display was probably the best one we've had. I think we kept a very good Leicester side very, very quiet, down to one shot really, and they had many one shot on target anyway. They had many chances to create something, I think, but just never ended up getting that final shot off, or putting themselves in that good position to be able to make something of it. And that's full credit to the defense. They were right all over them. As soon as they were anywhere near the box with the ball, our defense were all over them. The other thing too, like massive credit to our two fullbacks. And you and I were just talking before we went live here recording. That it looked like Leicester really targeted the two fullbacks, and I think like it probably makes sense from like a strategic point of view for them to have tried to do that, but it obviously didn't work because both of them stepped up and I think had probably their best games of the season. Like it was really amazing to see. Byram playing most of the game on a yellow, managing to not afterwards, of course, not going to ground, standing people up. Getting back, shielding the ball really well, just making sure, just being very, very tidy, I think was really key for him. And Archie was spectacular. Showed an incredible amount of maturity in tough situation for someone of his age, but really for someone of any age, frankly. Some of the ways that he dealt with things. You had mentioned, Jed, just before as well about that one moment where you thought that the attacking player had just got around him, and instead Archie kind of got his leg at and then just eased him out. Yeah. Just very, very mature, incredible defensive display. The midfield battle for me was one of the highlights of the match. I agree with you completely that our midfield pair absolutely dominated that game. It was surprising actually just how much of the midfield either Leicester gave up or we just took over. In that match, and maybe perhaps that had something to do with why they were going wide, or maybe we dominated the middle because they were going wide. I'm not sure why, but the two players that we had in the middle there were incredible. I understand what you're saying about Kamara, and honestly, his press resistance was the other thing that really stood out for me. You mentioned getting second balls, and I agree completely. He was right there all the time. Somehow he just always seemed to pop up. But when he actually got the ball, his ability to keep possession and, like you said, just sort of flick it onto the next person, recycle it, do whatever he had to do, or even just spin out of trouble and carry it, is something that we haven't seen from midfield in a long time. It's something that we've, I think, sorely missed. So I hope that this is not just sort of a high watermark for him. I hope this is him setting the standard for the way he's going to be able to play throughout the season.
I think so. I mean, a lot of my opinion was based off. I have a friend in Scotland who's a Rangers fan, and I was asking her when we were being linked to them all summer, like, what are we looking at here? What kind of a player is he? And she kind of said he can be very, very good when he's interested, but he has gone off the boil here to the point where he's not even in the squad. So he can lose form. And I think we've seen so far this season, he's had a very, very good game. Then he's had probably a weaker game, then a very, very good game, then a weaker game, and that's the kind of the inconsistency. But his last two games back to back, he's put in two very, very consistent, very mature, very controlling performances. And maybe it's just a case of getting used to the league speed. Maybe it's just a case of getting used to the players around them. But I thought he was everywhere in that middle of the park yesterday. He just kept popping up in places, and he's so good at that. And the concern I think we had coming in when he did sign was he seemed to be a very left-sided central midfield heavy kind of player. But if you look at him in the last two games for Leeds, he's covered every blade of grass in that middle of the park. Yeah, he's all the way across. And he's a good foil for Ampadu. If Ampadu does step forward with the ball, he just sits in behind him. And then if Ampadu sits in, he steps on. They have a really good partnership, and I thought they were great. Ethan Ampadu has kind of, I won't say gone under the radar this year because he hasn't, but he's to be man of the match performances by Somerville and Rutter and Somerville and, and James. And I think you kind of look at Ampadu and go, yeah, he was very good, but this guy was brilliant today. And you go, yeah, you probably not get enough man of the matches because of how consistent he's been in these games. But he's been absolutely incredible this season. And his distribution is what we've lacked that when we lost Calvin. We lost that distribution there. And Stroke can do it now. He can do it as well. But I think he deserves I won't say more credit than he gets because he gets a lot of credit, but I think he deserves a mention in what's been a really strong couple of weeks for Leeds outside of the odd blip. I mean, they had their, like, Stoke and Southampton were blips. Yeah. But either side of them, I think he's been brilliant. What are your thoughts on Ethan so far?
Yeah, he's a player. I can't believe we got him, and I can't believe we got him for the price that we paid. Like, he's He's been absolutely amazing. I mean, I think if you look at the very best matches by Calvin Phillips, that's the standard that Ethan's setting for himself as well. I think it's an upgrade for us, and I wish we had a player like that last season.
Yeah,
things may have looked a bit different for us in the middle of the park last season. So yeah, he's been excellent. A couple of things that really stand out for me: his consistency. Like, he is very, very consistently good. He never seems to have a bad match. Like, some games he's better than others, and of course, but his low water mark is actually quite high. So that's great. His distribution is excellent. He's also very, very good defensively, very good in the tackle, and he's tough. Like, he is made of iron. You see, he gets absolutely hammered on a regular basis. Yesterday, it was blood all over his socks from that rake on his ankle. Players play through that, occasionally, but he went down, he took his minute or whatever, and he was right back on, and nothing dropped in his standard at that point. No. So, I think he adds a lot of grit, and yet also adds a lot of finesse.
Yeah. He is calmness on the ball and quality distribution. It's really, really good. And Michael, they've been brilliant so far this season. Chris Somerville and Georginio Rutter. I think they had it's safe to say they had a tougher night last night than they've had so far. I mean, if you go back to the Huddersfield game, the long balls over the top, Chris Somerville was taking them in his stride with a brilliant first touch and running into space. Last night, it seemed to get stuck under his feet a little bit at times. Still making great runs, still making really good runs. Yeah. And Rutter kind of seemed to be more higher up the pitch. Like, he was definitely in that number 9 position for a lot longer in the game, where we've seen this year he drops way, way deep, picks up the ball. So he wasn't able to do that for us. But it was great to see other players step up in that situation and fill those gaps. And I think if you go across the whole team, there were very few players that didn't perform in one way or the other. He didn't do the donkey work last night that was needed to get back and defend when we didn't have to, especially in the second half, when we just sat from 70 minutes, just sat back and stoked with the pressure. To see, again, Rutter does a very good job of running back in and trying to win the ball off people and doubling up on players. So I think their performance from a defensive perspective last night was very, very good. Probably not their best from an attacking perspective, but they are playing against probably the best defense in the league this year. So what were your thoughts on the two lads yesterday?
Yeah, I think the quality of Leicester's defense, like, Fess had Somerville locked up. Like, every time Somerville looked like he was going to get into a good position, Fess was there to sweep up, to get in the way, to block him off, to shield the ball, to whatever it was. And I think it was just a very, very good defensive display from Leicester that kept our guys quiet. I mean, obviously we ended up getting there in the end. And it was from a set piece, but I mean, I think the defensive displays on both sides, on our side and their side, were comparable in the sense that we really kept each other quiet. But that said as well, I mean, we did have a lot of shots on target and they did not. So I don't think the shots that we necessarily had on target were particularly good ones, and there were quite a few that were pretty weak from far out. I'm thinking Georginio had one that was quite weak, and you would have hoped that he put more power on it. That one where Dan James got a break and was running into basically just open grass, and then sort of cut in and shot. That was weak. He could have maybe placed that more, or put more power into it, or possibly passed, because there was, I don't remember who it was that was running down the left side that was coming into the channel there. But what's that?
I think it might have been Rutter.
I think it was Rutter. Yeah, it must have been Rutter. Yeah. So, there were options, I think, where we might have done better. And of course, that first chance very early on that Piroe somehow or another just didn't get his foot wrapped around the ball enough and ended up sending it wide. So, I mean, I think Leicester had a very good defensive display. I think we probably had more opportunity to score earlier, that we also sort of missed ourselves, sort of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit there. But yeah, in terms of Georginio and Somerville, I think their defenders kept them locked up pretty good. They were often doubling up. They were targeting Georginio. I think they were, particularly. And I mean, why wouldn't you? He's probably one of the best players in this league. So
Yeah, yeah, he's been outstanding. He's been absolutely outstanding. The Dan James one for me was when I saw that him take his first touch, I was like, just run inside, like make an angle towards the center of the goal. But I think his first touch went dead straight ahead of him, and then that was
Yeah,
that. Then he had to
yeah,
keep running straight. Like that's a shame.
yeah.
You're not gonna be able to do that now at that pace. So it was a shame. But
Yeah, the
he's
first touch
attractive.
actually that was one of the things too. Was failing Somerville last night a little bit. Was the first touch. That was
Yeah,
the other thing that was letting him down. Now, like I said, Valfeis was there to sweep up a lot, but
pressure as well.
he might have had a harder time of doing that if Somerville's first touch hadn't escaped him a few times, and it did, and it hasn't been.
No.
Yeah, he's due a slight. He was really good otherwise. Electric as usual. His running was
very good. Yeah.
He's due a slight wobble every once in a while. He's been so good this season. I can't really get upset about it.
No. I want to talk about Meslier. I know we mentioned him briefly, but he's been under such a huge amount of pressure this year. And there have been people who've said he's not good enough for Leeds. Like, where do you stand on Meslier? And I mean, last season was such a mess for every player. I mean, 4 managers, 4 different styles of play, drastically different ones. Players that didn't want to be there, messy dressing room, and he took a huge amount of the brunt from the fans. Even though I keep trying to say to people, he faced more shots last year than any other goalkeeper in the league. We didn't very much do a good job of protecting him last year. Where I think last night we did a very good job of protecting him. Where do you sit on Meslier? I still think there will be a very good goalkeeper there in a couple of years' time. I think he's very good right now, but I think there'll be a proper experienced top level goalkeeper there once he gets 27, 28, 29. He's got time. Where do you sit on Meslier?
Yeah, my view of Meslier, I mean, I think I grew frustrated with him last season as well, because I think he was making some mistakes that he maybe didn't have to. But I have to step back from that a little bit and say, he spent not just one season, but really 2 seasons under siege, in a way that no other keeper, frankly, at that level was facing. So, if mistakes at that level were creeping into his game, I think you have to wonder how much of that was just due to the mental pressure of knowing that no matter what he does, his defense isn't going to bail him out. Yeah. And they never, ever were the last couple of seasons. And now he's got a sort of more solid, crew in front of him. I think that probably gives him confidence. And honestly, I don't think it's just him. I think that would give any keeper confidence to know that the team around you, is solid, and they're there to help you out, and they're going to help you out. And if you pass to them, they're not going to immediately cough up the ball and have it turning right back on you again, which happens so many times, trying to play out from the back and immediately get pressed, cough it up, and they're right back on us again. That's not happening. We have defenders who are actually playing out, people who are able to move the ball, people who are able to play with the ball at their feet. I think that gives him confidence, that what's in front of him will protect him and can do what they have to do. I think, with Meslier, the other thing, and someone that I know on another sort of podcast community, the All Stats Aren't We community, they always talks about how development isn't linear, right? Yeah. And it isn't, and you have to look at Meslier and say he's still actually a young man, and he's still very young for a keeper in particular. Yeah. So when you go back to that last half of the season when we were promoted, that first season in the Premier League where he set the record for the most number of clean sheets by a keeper of that age, like under 21, beating the record. I think it was Joe Hart that held the record before. So another obviously very good keeper. Yeah. I think it shows that Meslier has the quality and the ability, and now if he just maybe has a season where things are a little bit more settled, he can come back on that development curve that he was on before and continue to improve with the confidence that I think you need to be able to do that. Because if you're always under siege, you're not really developing at that point. You're just always in sort of panic mode, right? The other thing I was going to say about keepers in general is that because they have such a unique individual position in the team, they often get centered out. But you have to remember it is still a team game. So that's the important aspect of having players in front that you have confidence in. It is still a team game. It's a defensive unit, not just a keeper.
Yeah, I think if you look at his entire time at Leeds, the latter 2 seasons in the Premier League, or at least the 18 months, were outliers rather than they were who he was as a goalkeeper. You've got to defend, you've got to look after your goalkeepers, you've got to protect them. And just even seeing Ayling sweeping up that ball after Meslier makes that save. That's what you're looking for, you know. And if you look back to last weekend's Huddersfield, when Meslier does drop the ball, Liam Cooper doesn't react with the striker and lets the striker run and get a tap in. You need to have your defenders react. And we used to always say when I was coaching players, I want any shots on our goalkeeper. I want to see our defenders standing over our goalkeeper straight afterwards. So as soon as it hits him, just head towards our keeper and get around them and protect them, you know. And you've got to do that because it's a defense, and the goalkeeper is part of that defense. All of them are in that together, so it's hugely important. But I was delighted to see him get his moment last night, and delighted to see him get pushed forward into the fans and get the claps for him. I was delighted for him. Another player I wanted to talk about, Michael, was I love the centre half partnership that we've got brewing here. I'm a big fan of what's going on there at the moment. And I keep calling them Beauty and the Beast, and it's not a slight on Joe Rodon at all here. But again, last night you see Pascal Stroke come off the pitch and his kit's still pretty pristine. The hair's slicked back, nice and neat and tidy. He's all white. Rodon's going off, and there's a couple of splatters of blood here. There's a big muck patch down the side of him here, and his nose is a bit red, and his face. You know, he has been battered this season by people, and there was that chance that Leicester did have in the second half where he just launched himself in front of it, takes it full in the face nearly, and it goes out for a corner kick. And you're like, I love this. You've got, you know, he covers Stroke really well when he gets caught out of position. Stroke covers him really well, but he's been taking so much punishment physically and to see he just gets up. And I said this a couple of weeks ago on another podcast. He has that face when the camera zooms in on him afterwards. Like at any moment, he could just start crying. Like at any moment, he could just go, I'm in pain.
His nose is so red. Like
everything.
Yeah.
He has this lookers like,
come
on, someone else. But he's been brilliant. He's been, both of them have been. What's your take on the two centre-backs so far this season and Rodon as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of the comments I made about Meslier, you know, take out the keeper aspect and copy and paste with respect to Stroke as well, just in terms of confidence and getting shelled and, you know, sort of being left alone and left out to dry so many times last season and the season before that. I think his confidence took a major hit as well. I think being in the championship this season is going to be really good for his development too. I think we've got our Pascal Struck back, and in no small part, I think is that due to having someone beside him who does the work that Joe Rodon is doing. And I think the Beauty and the Beast thing is funny. I think in two ways, because one, it's how they look when they come off the pitch, but that's also indicative of how they play as well, because Pascal is so good. I mean, they're both actually both been quite good on the ball, but Pascal is just such a Rolls Royce of a defender in the sense of like just on the ball, picking pass. His distribution is amazing. His ability to pass the ball forward, his vision, some of the time, some of the ways he releases our attackers from defense is just spectacular. And Rodon's rough and ready, man. He's in there doing all the dirty work. He's making those last-ditch tackles. The one last night, there was another one where the ball came in and Meslier was coming for it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rodon steams through and just cuts it out. And you know what? Meslier would have got it anyway, and that's fine. But honestly, that's what I want to see from at least one of our defenders. And Rodon is absolutely filling that role. And I think he's doing it really well. I think it's a great partnership. And long may it continue. I hope they both stay fit and healthy and are able to keep it up, because I think we've got a really solid core developing there. Yeah, we really do. The spine of the team is looking really strong. I've still have question marks around Joel Piroe as a number 10, but we might get to that before the end. There were comments made by Maresca before the game and after the game that I thought were very interesting. And I did want to comment on the stuff he said before the game, because, you know, that has an awful way of biting you on the arse when you do say things, you know. So I tend to keep my bib clean before a game, so it can't come back to bite me on the arse like the Glenn Kamara comment did. but in general, before the game in his press conference, Maresca was asked about how big a game this was against Leeds United and how big it was for Leicester. And I think what he meant to say was, it's just another game. But what he said was, it's just another 3 points. And I took that as being, well, that's very presumptuous straight away. You're assuming you're getting 3 points here. Yeah. Yes, you've had a great run this year. Yes, you're in great form, but that's a big statement. They lose. Then you look after the game and his comments around, it's a very good Leeds team. I think Sunderland are a better team. I thought was salty. Not really provable right now because we haven't played Sunderland yet. And, you know, they have, but
Look at the league places, that's not the case. So, what's your take on the comments, just in general? Like, I know we prepped it, but what are your takes on his comments in general in this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope that his comments going into it about it just being another 3 points was just a mistake, in the sense that he was intending to say, well, it's just another game, and trying to, I don't know, take the pressure off or whatever, right? Maybe deflect a little bit, because he knew that going into this game, it actually was going to be a really tough game. And sometimes you'll see, managers try to downplay it a little bit so that it doesn't look so bad afterwards, saying, well, at the start we went in, we knew it was tough, it was just another game, we're just focused on it, whatever. So maybe I'm hoping that's what the comments were, but given what he said afterwards, maybe not so much, because it did seem to be a bit salty to say, well, it's, Sunderland are better. I'm looking at the table. It doesn't look to me like Sunderland are better.
It really doesn't.
Nope. nope, not better. So I don't. maybe Johnny Woodgate would come in and say the table's lying, but
probably.
I don't think after this many games it is. Look, I think Sunderland are a good team, and I think they've, with Jack Clark, former Leeds boy, sort of leading the way over there. They're quite impressive, but to suggest that they're a better team, I think, is probably a stretch. And yeah, like you said, a bit salty.
Yeah. Speaking of Jack Clark, and then speaking of potential things that could happen coming into January, just your thoughts on what we need, Michael, before, because it's kicking off. We're into November now. All of a sudden, we've started seeing some rumors flying around. We've an interesting one was Amiri. Over the weekend, comments have come out from Germany that have basically said he regrets not making the move to Leeds. Now he's played 7 minutes football all season. Yeah. And he said he has removed the people or the family members who talked him out of the move from his staff. So he's basically saying the advice that he got was bad advice. So now he wants to move again in January. That doesn't mean Leeds, but he wants to move in January, and he's removed these people. But
that was a curious comment for me, because I thought a lot of the story coming out at the time was that it was his pregnant wife that didn't want the move. So, I mean, I hope that's not what he's
for, isn't it?
I hope it's not that, but yeah, like, I mean, I guess we all make mistakes, and sometimes we come to regret them.
I think his dad and his brother are involved in his team as well. I think his father came over with him. I think they were involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think, people look at it, they think second division of, whatever, right? Well, second division, championship. Yeah. They don't want to make that move because they see themselves as playing in the first division somewhere else, right? And fine. I wouldn't have any interest in going back there again. I mean, you had your chance. Yeah. You didn't take it. Move on, right? It's fine that you could admit you made a mistake, but sometimes you have to live with the mistakes you make. So, yeah. In terms of what we need, I mean, going into the season, I definitely would have thought that we needed a lot more in a few places. Right wing in particular. Although, Dan James is doing very, very well there. It may still be somewhere that we might look to strengthen on the right. I think we're set for the left. Fullback, I mean, both sides, players are doing very, very well. I think we have to recognize that the players that are there are not really naturals in those positions. You do have some concerns always about Byram being able to stay fit, though they seem to be managing that very, very well. He seems to have no issues at all. I'm not sure how they're doing it, or maybe his injury problems are actually just behind him at this point. I don't know, but there's always a concern there. Now, if Junior Firpo actually is fit, and maybe it's a situation where those two platoon and neither of them are being overplayed, that they can both stay fit enough to rotate.
Yeah.
And I, Firpo, I'm not the biggest fan of Junior Firpo, not just the injury stuff. And I mean, I guess you could make the argument that he never really got going, but I just don't see it. But at this level, we don't know. Could he be really good in the championship? He very well could be. So
you have to be. I mean, if he's
hope.
I think what I said about Firpo, we'll go back to your point, sorry for cutting you off, but there was the one good game last year he had against Southampton. All the apology letters to Junior Firpo came out of the woodwork, but that was because he scored a goal, not because he defended particularly well.
Yeah.
You look at how good Sam Byram is 1v1. You look at how Even with a yellow card last night, how calm he is trying to nick the ball off a winger without getting dragged into fouling or committing himself. For me, the case of Piroe is he should be good at this level. Like, if he does come in and play well, there shouldn't be anyone saying, "Oh, well, now look at Junior Firpo." No, he should be good at this level. He played for Barcelona. He's played for Real Betis. Minimum we should expect from him is to be good at this level. Yeah. So that's where I said. And if he comes in and he's not good enough, then he's done. Like, there's nowhere else for him to go with Leeds.
Yeah. Yeah. So a move to the Netherlands or something beckons at that point, right? Like, it's not. Yeah. I agree. I would hope that he is, and I welcome him back onto the team. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him out there just to see, maybe in a lower leverage kind of match where, where we're not, nothing like playing against Leicester or Ipswich or Sunderland or one of the top teams. But I'd love to see him come on and get some minutes and just to see how he does. I'm totally open to that. In terms of what we need, though, that there are, I think right now it's just question marks. I'm not sure that I'd necessarily come out and say at this moment in time we definitely need this. Fullback, still question marks for the reasons I just said. Right wing is something that I think we might want to look at just to have someone else there for rotation. I mean, we can always play people there. Somerville seems to be doing so much better on the left right now, although he can go to the right, and I think he'd be good there as well. It changed the nature of his game a bit, obviously. But yeah, Dan James is doing really well over there right now, obviously. Nanto, I think, can go over there as well, but again, it just changes the dynamic. So I think that actually having a proper out-and-out right winger would be helpful. And then I guess the other question is, I don't necessarily, maybe it's a bit harsh to say, but how do you solve a problem like Piroe right now?
That's the one.
Because he's, I understand why you want to have him in the team because he's always a goal threat, except that right now he's not.
He's not.
And so what value is he bringing right now to the starting 11? And it's very questionable that he's bringing much of anything because he doesn't press, and I don't expect him to. That isn't why we got him. If we want a pressing forward, we'll put Bamford out there.
Yeah.
Right. We want a pressing forward that doesn't score, it's Bamford. You want a scoring forward that doesn't press, it's Piroe. If only we could put them together, we'd have Harry Kane or something. Like, I mean, right? Wouldn't be playing for us in the championship. But
no.
Yeah. So I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek, a little harsh on both of them there in a sort of joking kind of way. But yeah, he's not doing what he's actually there to do right now either. And that chance that he had at the very start of the match is a perfect, maybe it's just form. I think it's just, maybe he's just a little out of form. Not sure how he got there because he started off so brightly.
Yeah.
Scoring was every other match or whatever at the start of the season, but now it's been a few where the performances haven't been there. And is he snatching at chances? He's just not getting his foot wrapped around it. Something's happening, or he's not quite getting the shots that he was getting before. I also wonder how much of our system is not playing to his strengths, because our wingers, and bless them because they're really good at it. Well, Dan James may be less good at this, but also with Rutter, if he goes wide, which he does quite a lot, because he covers a lot of ground. We don't seem to be hitting him with cutbacks to that area of the pitch that he likes to operate, which is just sort of just outside or just inside the box, right at the edge of the area. So our wingers often will cut in and try to shoot, which is great because it's working for them. But I don't think we're hitting him with the kinds of passes that really will elevate his game either. So I don't know if it's entirely his fault that he's not scoring anymore. But obviously some adjustments with the system, I think, and also with his own game, I think, need to be made for us to get the best out of him.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a while that my conversation around Rutter and Piroe in the 9 and the 10. Rutter's done his best work for Leeds when he's dropped deep into areas. I mean, look at the assists he's got this year. Most of them are from inside our half where he's played it round, and his weight of his pass is beautiful. So he's very, very good at that. My question has always been swap the two, and it was never a criticism of either of the two of them because they're both doing very well and we're winning games with both of them in the team. The question I always said was, would we be winning more easily if we did swap them around? if you do put Piroe on the 9, do we score more goals in games? Like, does the game against Stoke not happen? Does, against Huddersfield, do we put them out of sight in the first half completely? Like, do we absolutely put a cricket score on the scoreline? Against Norwich, do we score goals early on? Because, I mean, if you look at that game, even early on in the game, we still do miss big chances. We still do miss important moments in games. And then we last night we didn't regret it. We have looked back on a few games and regretted early misses. As good as the last 15, 20 minutes was against Norwich, the first half was horrendous. Like, you're 2-0 down at half time against a team you shouldn't be 2-0 down again. But you've had chances to not be 2-0 down. And we've snatched at them and missed them. And the other point then to make is, and it's a similar one, if you take Piroe out of that team, and if you put in or go and get one in January, whatever you want to do it, a out-and-out creative number 10, whose job will be to drop in, help the midfield, pick up the ball, find passes for your strikers to run into, and maybe get Rutter running at the goalkeeper more often rather than dropping in. Do we get more from them? And it's not, again, the benchmark is we're currently winning games. So it's nothing negative.
Yep.
But could it be easier? Could it be better? Could it be more convincing? That's where I've sat on it. But I do think we are missing something still in this team. I still think in that number 10 position, I'd still love to see Willie Gnonto tried in that position, because I think he has the power in his strike to cause problems. He's got the pace. He can press. He does get under people's skin, but no one else seems to fancy him in there. But do you think Leeds need to go out and look at a number 10 position, Michael, in January as well? Maybe, because we did look at it in the summer. Like, Amiri was a number 10. It was after Piroe. So it was in our heads that we need number 10. Do you think Janet Park is happy with what he's got right now, or do you think come January we'll go, yeah, we probably need to try and have another look at number 10?
Yeah, it's a good point. So that's the one area for sure is that 10, because I think right now we don't actually have one. We kind of have two false nines playing swapped around in a lot of ways. Like neither Rutter nor Piroe are actually out and out nine, like line leading nines. Piroe is a striker, but in his game has always been those sort of late third man runs to the edge of the area and scoring from a little bit further out, rather than sort of being a poacher or someone that's pressing high or any of that sort of stuff. So and with Rutter as well, I mean, he's not the same kind of box presence. He is giving making a lot of chances. He is creating a lot, and I love his game in terms of dropping deep and moving the ball. So we are getting a lot of creativity out of him that you'd expect from a 10, but it's coming from him dropping deep from the 9 position and not really having anybody up front at that point when he does that. So, and that's sort of having everyone kind of advance. So you're right. I think if we were to get a 10, it would probably free one or both of them, or either of them, to play in a more advanced role with less dropping deep. I do wonder, would we actually get more out of Rutter if we were to do that, or would it be a situation where we're actually just taking away one of the really good elements of his game by saying, well, you don't need to do this anymore because we have somebody else doing it? Yeah. So I would be concerned about that element of it. But that said, I agree with you that may be an area we would want to look at, because I don't think we can just always rely on Rutter to be doing that all the time. I think it would be good to have a bit of depth there as well, to have somebody else if it's not working for him. And it almost wasn't working yesterday. I mean, obviously we won and that was brilliant, but like we were saying it earlier, very early in the pod, like it wasn't quite clicking for them. No. It would be good to have someone else, maybe a different element to bring on to see if a different look could unlock defenses when they're not able to with their type of skill set. So yeah, I agree that is something that we might want to look at as a creative player. Would allow them to sort of maybe push up more or try a different element to their game, which they're not able to do right now because we kind of need them doing what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one we have to look at. There's a couple of gaps there. I think I'd like to see a natural right back as well. We're not going to. Well, Jet Spence is there, but assuming he comes back and he's okay, I would like to see a backup right centre back. And my thinking on this is, if Farke doesn't fancy Charlie Creswell as the next option there, Liam Cooper can't be that option anymore. We've seen what happens when he comes in, because he goes in at left centre back and then Stroke gets pushed out of position to the right centre back, and he's not that good at right centre back, and then Cooper's shaky at left centre back, and the whole thing gets nervy. So I'd like to see if it is a case, and I like Charlie Creswell, I'd like to see him playing it. He was very good second half of the season last year for Millwall. But if it's not Charlie, if he doesn't fancy Charlie, then I would like to see him go and get a right centre back. I thought it was interesting last night. The under-21s had a very heavy defeat to Crystal Palace last night. It was 7-1.
Saw that 7-1, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we were home as well. But Cressy wasn't in that team. wasn't in that squad, but he was in the Leeds squad last night either. So he's stuck in this limbo where he's not on the bench for Leeds and he's not starting from the 21s. Like he's not in the squad at all, and that's not good for a 21.
He's not injured or anything.
No, he's not injured. He was asked about him during the week, and he said that, would you give him more minutes in the 21s because he's not playing? He said, well, they're part of our match preparation for these games, so they have to be involved with us. And they're like, yeah, but it's not good for his development.
I was going to say that seems very poor man management right there, like, in terms of coaching development. That doesn't seem like the best spot to be. So
he seems to be in this position where he's being used as part of the opposition practice, kind of leading into games. Like, we need him to be part of this because we need to work on things against a defense that's good, and he's in that defense, but he's not going to be in the squad, which is a shame. It's a real shame because I think he's a very good right back. I think he has got a career at Leeds. He's got a long contract. It could be a case that he goes out on loan in January, but I think he needs to go and start playing games. And then in that case, I think Leeds need to go and get a right centre back to be an actual backup to Joe Rodon. And obviously I'd like to see Leeds just have a little try and tempt Spurs in January and go, here's 15 million, make the Joe Rodon deal permanent. Get that done quickly. And then after that, I think it's the 10.
Yep.
And I'd be very happy with the squad then. Maybe left back, but then, as I said, Byron's been doing very well, and Furbo should be okay. In the championship at left back. Should be fine.
Should be.
Michael, we've Plymouth next weekend. We've got a nice break for the lads before we go into the next international break, the last one before Christmas. We should be fairly confident coming into this game. Now, I'd like to see Leeds go out and actually do to Plymouth what we did to Huddersfield, go out and actually just get at these teams and batter them, put them out of the way early. What's your thoughts on that game coming up, and how are you feeling coming into the national break?
Yeah, I mean, I think not to Maresca it, but that should be 3 points. I feel confident going into that match. I mean, those are the games that we should be winning. I'm not saying that we definitely will. I think one of the things about this is a tough league and anyone can beat anyone. But I think those are the types of games that we need if we have any hope of going up at all, either the playoff route or otherwise. We definitely have to be winning those types of games. I'm feeling good, and I imagine that just looking at the way the players seem to have felt about themselves coming off the pitch yesterday, they probably have a lot of confidence in themselves now, and I hope they do, and they should. They deserve to feel good about the way that they're playing and about the results. So I'm hoping that will help carry us through. Obviously we have the quality there to do it, and it seems to be coming together. I'm still not totally happy with everything we're doing, like from a system point of view with Farka. A lot of it is still sort of vibesy, letting the really good sort of stacked superstars do their thing, as opposed to having a system that's creating the dominance. But maybe that's just where we're at right now, and it seems to be working okay. So let's just keep it rolling.
Yeah, it is. I'm exactly where you are. There's some of the, I said this again during the week, there's times where I think Daniel Farke's pragmatism is well placed. Like last night, I thought it was perfect. He did the right things last night. But then there are other games that keep going back to QPR when we're playing against 10 players. We're winning 1-0 against a team that's 21st in the table, and we're time wasting for the last 18 minutes in the corner flag in our own ground. That kind of stuff, it takes the shine off it for me. And I'm like, I don't want to see that. Yeah. I don't want to see Leeds being afraid of teams. I want to see us go and finish games off. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing. But again, as long as we're winning, it'll be classified as nitpicking. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. There is still work to do. We're not the finished article by a long way. We still have a gap. Yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think Birmingham beat Ipswich today. I'm hoping on that. That puts a bit more pressure on. But the gap down to 11 points now seems like a much more achievable gap to close. You've got the African Cup of Nations coming in January, where Leicester will lose 4 players for 10 matches. So there's a possibility there also of maybe they're not necessarily all playing for Leicester right now, but it does thin the squad, which could have an impact as well. So I think there's a lot of football to play. I still think second place is definitely on. I think there's a lot of games left before this settles down properly. But it's great to see us in that position. I think Plymouth coming up is a great way to wrap things up nicely. If we beat Plymouth, we'll have the exact same record for the last 2 international breaks in a row. Win, loss, win, win, win. Be identical. And so when we come out of that, you've got Rotherham, Swansea, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, something you want to make sure they're all wins. They're all wins. And this one's tough. Borough will be tough. Swansea won't be easy either. And then you've got Sunderland. You've a tricky. I think we said this at the start of the season, didn't we? That December is a bit of a tricky looking month. And then it kind of replicates itself towards the end of April, May, before the season finishes. And you've got Southampton in the last game. But look, long may it continue. We're nitpicking, I suppose, until they start losing. it's nothing majorly to worry about. But yeah,
it's all we can do. Just keep putting as many wins on the board as we can, and picking up those points, and hopefully that gap will close itself in time. Who knows with Leicester? I mean, even though we beat them yesterday, and even though we limited them to only one shot on target, it's clearly a very, very good football team.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to fall away. I'm sure that they're going to go up either as champions or in second place at the worst, probably as champions, I think. So that second place, though, I know there's a gap, but I don't think that Ipswich are going to be able to maintain what they've done all season. So I think it's there to be had, but we have to keep up we have to do our job. Essentially, we have to do our job and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Brilliant. Michael, thank you very much for getting up early this morning to have a chat with me. I feel really guilty about dragging you up on early Saturday morning. Thanks to everyone for watching. You can get Michael on Twitter at Leeds Faithful or at Maynard N on Twitter. You can follow him there. Some very good opinions all the time on all things Leeds United as well. So, Michael, massive thanks for spending some time with us this morning. And to everybody else, I will see you back on Monday morning for Leeds News. Have a great day. See you later.